only fitting that to wrap up our conference prediction series, we take a look at the SEC where realistically, I think 13 of these teams are going to be really competitive. They're going to be in a lot of tight games. I'd even say 14. I think it's a really good conference, and I'm really excited to go in depth, talk about each of these teams, talk about some of my big sleepers, and I feel like I'm very different than the consensus, particularly when it pertains to the SEC. Now, I'm not going to be going into my playoff stuff today. That will be that will come later this week that I'm really excited to get into. I'll give my playoff predictions. I'll give my college football award predictions because college football comes back this month. I couldn't be more excited. But if you guys are new to the channel and you enjoy college football, NFL, and NFL draft content, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Helps me out a ton, lets me know you guys are enjoying the videos, and helps get it out to more college football fans just like yourself. You guys know the deal. We start from the bottom. We work our way to the top. So let's take a look at who I think is going to be at the bottom of the SEC. And it shouldn't come as much of a surprise. That's going to be the Mississippi State Bulldogs. They're plus 100,000 to win the national title. Their over-under is 3.5 games, and I have them winning 3. Blake Shapen showed some flashes last year for this team. They had some good play from Jalen Smith. Isaac Smith has been a really good safety for them on the back end. But on one hand, they just have a tough schedule. And two, this is a team that they lost some talent. They lost their star receiver in Kevin Coleman. They lost some pieces. So I'm not really all that high on Mississippi State. I think 3.5 is the right total. Their out-of-conference schedule, it's not difficult, but I wouldn't say it's easy either. Southern Miss got so much better this year, adding Charles Huff and adding all of those pieces. That's a road game. I did give Mississippi State the win there, but that's not an easy win in the slightest. Arizona State on September 6th, I don't see that being a win for them. I think Arizona State is the clearly better team. Alcorn State, you should win. But let's not pencil in Northern Illinois as a win either. Remember, they upset Notre Dame last year. And then obviously you get into your SEC opponents where, look, you have some of your tougher opponents on the road versus Texas, at Texas A&M, at Florida. Missouri's not an easy place to play. So, yeah, I'm not that high on Mississippi State this year. I think this could potentially be the final year of Jeff Lebby if they continue to underperform. Like I said, there's not too much to really break down when it comes to Mississippi State. Not all that high on them. Let's move on to the next team, and that is going to be the Kentucky Wildcats. Now, a very similar sort of deal. Their over-under is 4.5. I do have the under for this team. I have them winning just 3 games. Look, they have another really tough schedule. They've got a couple of easy out-of-opponent games, Eastern Michigan and Tennessee Tech towards the back end of their schedule. Toledo beat an SEC team last year. Let's not forget that. Toledo is one of the powerhouses in the group of 5. You got to go at South Carolina, at Georgia, at Auburn. I mean, tough places to play without a doubt. Then you get Texas, Tennessee, and Florida all coming into your town. Look, this is another team that they lost some talent. Now, in some ways, I think they got better. I think at the quarterback spot, you have to feel a lot better than what you had last year with Brock Vandegrift, who was an absolute liability for them. But you lost Barry and Brown. You lost some star receivers this year. This is going to be a tough year. You bring in Kendrick Law from Alabama. I love the David Gusta pickup from Washington State, one of my favorite players to watch on that team last year. But the schedule's tough. I just don't really see this being a team that's going to win a lot of games. So yet again, I've got another team finishing with 3 wins in the SEC. Just don't really love what we've got going on so far. I think at the bottom of the conference, those bottom 2, I think, will be the 2 worst teams in the conference. Now, the rest of these teams, I think, are going to be competitive. They're going to be teams that are going to have just the records aren't going to show how good they actually are. So with that in mind, next up, I do have the Arkansas Razorbacks. Arkansas, I believe they went 5-7 last year or 6-7. I don't remember their exact record. They had some big wins though. One at home against Tennessee. They were really competitive. I believe they played well down the stretch. Taylon Green, I think, is an underrated quarterback. We know how excellent of an athlete this player is, but I do think he's got some real upside to prove that he can outplay what he did last year, even was battling injury. I think the upside's really high for Taylor Green. They did lose some receivers. You lost Isaac Tesla, you lost Luke Haas, and you lost Andrew Armstrong. So three big-time receivers out the door. You bring in Omega Blake, I believe the transfer from Charlotte. Going to keep my eyes on him. Braylon Russell played well for them in the backfield last year. The offensive line, we'll see how it looks. You're kicking Fernando Carmona into the interior, which is going to be interesting to see. And they had some nice play from the secondary. David Oke, Xavier Sori, some nice players there. But yet again, as is the case with a lot of these, not an easy schedule. And I think some of the out-of-conference opponents are difficult. Memphis is not an easy opponent. You get Notre Dame, which I believe that's going to be a tough game for Notre Dame. But Notre Dame, as many people have seen, I'm very, very high on Notre Dame this year. You got to go at Tennessee, at Ole Miss, at LSU, and at Texas. I do have this team winning 4 games. I think you beat Alabama A&M, Arkansas State. I do think you can beat Memphis. I think I gave them a win over Memphis, and I have them beating Mississippi State as well. So I've got them finishing 4-8. Another year where I think Sam Pittman likely goes after this year, unfortunately. Just hasn't been able to piece together like a true contender in the SEC. No, that's not an easy task in the slightest, but I do have Arkansas finishing 4-8. Next up, I do have the Vanderbilt Commodores finishing with a 6-6 record. This is an interesting one because this is a team that overperformed last year. They went 7-6. They ranked 12th in the SEC last year, but had the biggest shocker of the college football season when they took down Alabama. So with that in mind, I do think a lot of people are sleeping on Vanderbilt. Their over-under is 4.5 games, but I still don't have them finishing higher than 6 wins. Diego Pavia, I like Diego Pavia. I think he's a good quarterback. I think, I don't know what the upside is with your team as Diego Pavia as your quarterback. Eli Stowers, a great tight end. But this is a team that on the offensive line, they lost some pieces. They needed to bring in some players. They brought in Jordan White from Liberty, which is nice. The defensive line's all right, but I just don't love, they've got some easy opponents here. Charleston Southern, I think you can beat. I think Virginia Tech is very winnable for you. Georgia State, Utah State, we talked about Kentucky already. And if you can get one more win, whether that's a Missouri at home, an Auburn at home, there is a road to this team being competitive, but overall, a bit of a tougher in-conference schedule. They finished 6-6 last year. I don't think they got significantly worse. I've got them finishing with the same record this year. This is kind of going to be where we start to get into I think everyone agrees that those are probably the bottom 4 teams in the conference. After that, I think it's very up in the air, and I'm going to lose some people here. But I do have Missouri finishing 6-6 this year. They're over under 7.5 games. They're plus 7,500 to win the conference. Another team that I like some of the games in their schedule: Central Arkansas, Louisiana, UMass, Mississippi State. Those are 4 wins at Vanderbilt. I think you can beat Vanderbilt. That's 5 wins for you. Kansas, I also have as a win. So there's where your 6 wins are coming from. But South Carolina, Alabama, Auburn, A&M, Oklahoma, it's not an easy schedule. It's not an easy schedule for this team. Now, there are things that I'm really excited to see, and it starts with the offense. I think Missouri's offense has the opportunity to put up a lot of points and be really competitive. Eli Drinkwitz has done a phenomenal job with this program year in and year out, and this is a team that was incredibly active in the transfer portal. Whether it be going out and getting Josiah Trotter, the linebacker from West Virginia, whether it be getting Bo Prabula from Penn State, who really flashed when he got on the field. I'm excited to see what this team's going to look like in the designed run game, because Ahmad Hardy was elite last year for Louisiana Monroe. You bring him in as a true sophomore, I think the upside is sky high for him. Kevin Coleman, we talked about that being a big loss for Mississippi State. Well, he comes in to fill that Luther Burden role, and I think that is a perfect scheme fit for Missouri. You have a good defense. Damon Wilson from Georgia being the big X factor. Guy that didn't see the field a lot, but the upside is exceptionally high. It's a tough schedule. Completely new look roster. I do have some concerns about it. Like I said, I think all of these teams are going to be really competitive. I just don't know if Bo Prabula, without really having seen him in the SEC, what that's going to look like. So I do have some question marks there, but I do think they're going to be competitive. I got them finishing 6-6. Next up, another team that I think is going to be a surprise. I got Ole Miss finishing at 7-5. Another tough out-of-conference group here. Versus Tulane, versus Washington State. Two of the better group of 5 programs. It's going to be an interesting year for Ole Miss, and I do think this is kind of a retooling year for them because last year I think they really tried to go all in to win the national title. I mean, going to get Walter Nolan, this is a team that went out and got big-time transfer acquisitions. Jackson Dart was still there and a very established quarterback at that point, and it didn't pay off. They didn't end up making the college football playoff, and they choked down the stretch of that season. There's a lot of pressure, I think, on this team to win, but I think you also have to see what you got. Austin Simmons played really well in that one drive in the Georgia game. I think a lot of people are overreacting to that drive because it was one drive. Let's see what we got here. I like some of the moves they made in the portal, bringing in Dejon Stribling, bringing in Luke Haas from Arkansas, the tight end. Like, there's some nice pieces here. Ole Miss lost a ton of talent, though, on both sides of the football. They've got big shoes to fill, and the schedule is not necessarily the easiest. We talked about Tulane and Washington State. Well, I am going to give them the benefit of the doubt in those games. LSU is not an easy game. At Georgia, at Oklahoma, South Carolina, Florida. Those are all difficult games for this team that we'll see how it pays off. Everything is riding on Austin Simmons, who I think is like one of the biggest X factors in college football this year, because if he is good right away, it's going to be really, really fun for college football. But we'll see what happens. I have them finishing at 7-5. I'm not ready for the comments to absolutely murder me on this one. I'm not high on Texas A&M this year. I have them finishing with a 7-5 record. And look, I know Texas A&M was really, really good last year. This is a team that went 8-4. They lost in the Las Vegas Bowl. But did Texas A&M really do anything that makes me feel like this is a team that can go out and win the conference? They're like 4th in SEC odds, and I just do not see that upside with A&M this year. Marcel Reed is getting the full offseason to be the starter. They brought him in midseason, and he showed great flashes. Again, another team that the designed quarterback run stuff is going to be really fun to see. Marcel Reed brings elite athleticism, but the accuracy was completely up and down all over the place, and they lost some talent offensively and defensively. I love the offensive line. All 5 guys, I think, have an upside of being drafted. You bring in Kevin Concepcion from NC State, one of the best receivers in the entire portal. I think that's a big-time get for you. But look at the guys that this team lost just defensively. You lost Shamar Stewart and Shamar Turner, and you lost a lot of really key players for this team. Schedule, it's a middle-of-the-pack schedule, I'd say. It's a standard SEC schedule, but you got to play Notre Dame out of conference. That's never an easy team to play. And you got to go on the road to Texas, which some of these other teams that we've talked about don't. I don't love the schedule for them. I really don't. I think they've got some tough road games, and they've got some teams that I'm really high on coming into their building. If Marcel Reed can take the next step in terms of his development and making the right reads and processing, like, yes, I think the upside is there for A&M to be around like a 9-win team. I think that's kind of their ceiling, but I'm not betting on that to happen. I did not see enough from Marcel Reed to give me excitement, and so I have them at 7-5. I know a lot of people are going to be upset about that one, but I just am not very high on A&M this year. Coming in next, I do have the Tennessee Volunteers. Now, very similarly, I'm pretty low on Tennessee as well, I feel like. I somehow still have them at around 7 to 8 wins. Their over-under is 8.5. This is another team that, obviously, the Nico Iamaleava situation was very dramatic and drawn out, and they still were able to get a solid quarterback in the portal. You bring in Joey Aguilar. They have some interesting pieces in terms of young quarterbacks that they could develop, but another team that I am worried about simply because I just don't love the talent that this team lost. You lost your starting quarterback. You lost your starting running back. You lost a couple of starting receivers for you. The offensive line is only returning one starter in Lance Hurd. You lost your two best defensive players last year. So they are 58th in returning production this year, which is not ideal. And yeah, I do think it's going to be a tough year for Tennessee this year, especially with questions at the quarterback position. Syracuse is your opener. I don't think that's like an easy win for you. Syracuse is a really competitive team. You got to play Georgia. You got to play Alabama. You got to play Florida, Oklahoma. Like, I think all four of those games are the four that they will lose. I don't see a floor. Like, I don't think they lose to Vanderbilt or New Mexico State. Like, I could see this team winning 7 games at their worst, but they're still going to be a pretty competitive team. I think Josh Heupel does a really good job of neutralizing the team's weaknesses. They're really well coached defensively, and I love some of the pieces defensively. I think in the secondary, they've got the opportunity to be really good. Jermod McCoy, he will miss a little bit of time, but maybe the best corner in college football when he is on the field. So you love that. You've got some nice pieces here. I still think they're going to be competitive. I think they're a bowl team without question. I've got Tennessee at 8-4. Next up, I'm very, very high on Oklahoma. Their over-under is 6.5 games. I am buying all the Oklahoma stock that I can get. I think they're a borderline playoff team. I really do. I think that if they go 9-3 with this schedule, there's going to be some talks about, does Oklahoma deserve an at-large bid? And, I think that is a very fair conversation to have. Oklahoma had just as good of an offseason as I think anybody could have hoped. You were able to retain a lot of your key players defensively, but you improved this offense drastically. Deion Burks is coming back. He's going to be fully healthy this year. I think that is a huge addition for them. You improved the ground game by getting John Mateer and Jade Knott. I'm all in on John Mateer. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. I think the upside with him is really, really high. You get R. Mason Thomas and Marvin Jones, I think a lethal edge rushing duo. And they've got some young guys in the secondary and linebacker room that you really buy into. If John Mateer hits the ground running, which I think he will, I think this is going to be a seamless transition for him. He's following his offensive coordinator. There's a lot to really love about this team. And I think the schedule is brutal. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Michigan is one of your out-of-conference opponents. You got Auburn, Texas, South Carolina, Alabama, and LSU. We haven't talked about any of those teams yet. So of those teams, you're expecting them to beat some of them. You get Auburn at home. Texas is a very winnable game for you in the Red River rivalry. You've got Alabama. You got to go on the road. You got to go on the road to South Carolina. I am buying the stock, though. I think they can beat LSU. I think they can beat Missouri. I think they can beat Ole Miss. I think they can beat Kent State, Auburn, Temple, Michigan, Illinois State. That's 9 wins right there. So I'm really high on Oklahoma. I love the moves that they made. We know they're going to be a good defensive team. We know that Scott Venables has done a great job building that defense. Can the offense match the defensive production has really been the question. I'm expecting a big jump this year, and I'm all in on the Oklahoma Sooners. Next up, though, we do have another team finishing 9-3, and it is the LSU Tigers. Kind of the opposite situation from Oklahoma. I'm a lot lower on LSU than I think many people are. Another team with a tough schedule. It starts right out the gate where I think this trend of them losing week 1 is going to continue. I don't think they're going to beat Clemson. I think they lose to Clemson. I think they lose to South Carolina. South Carolina, I think, is going to be out for blood after that game happened last year. And I don't think they beat Alabama. They got to go on the road to Alabama. Texas A&M at home, I think that's a tough one as well. You got to go at Oklahoma as well, who we just talked about. But this is an interesting team. I think a lot of people are really bullish on the moves that they made defensively. They were active in the portal, going out and getting Mansour Delane, getting A.J. Halsey, getting Jamari Butler and Patrick Payton, and they made a lot of additions to the defensive side of the ball, which is great. I think it's great. I'm worried about how it's all going to gel. LSU has not had a good defense in quite some time, and while they took some necessary leaps in the right direction last year, it still wasn't amazing. Offensively, they're going to be good. Garrett Nussmeier is a good quarterback. Do I think he's the best quarterback in college football? No. I think he's slightly overrated. But I still think he is a good quarterback that can help this team win football games and can help get them into the playoff mix. Caden Durham, I think, takes the steps up. You bring in Barry and Brown, and you've got the Andersons and Nick and Aaron. There's some upside here, certainly, but I do think that this team will fall short of their national championship aspirations. The defense still worries me. I like the moves they made, but Jamari Butler, I don't think is that good. I don't think Patrick Payton's very good. I like Mansour Delane. Like, you're betting on a lot of unproven guys to kind of prove it, and I just don't know if it's going to happen. So I have them finishing 9-3. I still think they're going to be in the mix, but I am a little bit lower on LSU than I think the consensus is. Another team I'm really low on compared to the consensus is the Georgia Bulldogs. I don't see Georgia as the top of the competition anymore. And I do think they're going to play spoiler and be a jerk, like just a pain to play week in and week out. Like, I think they're going to beat Tennessee. I think they're going to beat Auburn. I think they're going to beat Florida. I have 3 losses for this team this year. I have that coming against Alabama. I have that coming against Texas. I think Georgia Tech is going to beat them this year. It took 8 overtimes for them to beat them last year. And I do think Georgia, in some ways, is better. In some ways, I think they're worse. Carson Beck is gone. I don't think any quarterback was going to make any magic happen behind that offensive line last year, which they really didn't make any drastic moves to go and try to improve. I would have gone all out to try and improve this line because it was a disaster last year. You got better receivers. You bring in Zachariah Branch. You bring in Noah Thomas. But the point I think I'm most concerned about is this defense. I don't think they're as good as they've been in years prior. I really don't. KJ Bolden's exciting. You've got some nice pieces, but I don't think that this is going to be this devastating pass rush that just wreaks havoc. I think they're going to be in a lot of close games. Georgia struggled last year. They won the SEC, but this was not a pretty team to watch last year. And I do think in a lot of ways that they're going to struggle again. You lost Jalen Walker and Michael Williams and some of your big run stuffers up in the middle. And while they do a great job of recruiting defensively, there's no question about it, I do think it's going to be a tough road for them. So I have them finishing 9-3, and I think they're going to be around like 4th to 5th in the conference. So I'm probably going to be wrong on that, but not very high on Georgia this year. I am, however, very high on the Auburn Tigers. People are going to get so upset with me about this. Auburn's a great football team that last year I thought they had some moments that you really felt excited about, to be honest. Auburn ended up going 5-7 and ultimately ended up missing a bowl game. But this team was really competitive last year. They're 22nd in returning production. I would argue they have one of the best offensive lines in the entire country. Between Connor Lew, between Jeremiah Wright, you bring in Xavier Chaplin, you bring in Mason Murphy. Like, there's a really, really good offensive line. They made plays defensively. Keldrick Folk, I think, is one of the best defensive players in all of college football. You've got a secondary that I think is going to take some steps in the right direction. They had some young guys playing back there last year. The big additions are offensively, though. Hugh Freeze was a disaster for this team last year. Inconsistent quarterback play, a lot of injuries. You bring in Jackson Arnold, and then you also have true freshman Deuce Knight in here. Your quarterback room is going to be massively upgraded this year. I don't think there's any question in my eyes about that. And I think they might have the best wide receiver duo in the conference. Yes, Alabama fans are going to be upset about this, but I think Cam Coleman is a better player than Ryan Williams. The flashes he showed last year were remarkable. And then you bring in Eric Singleton to be the perfect complement and speed threat. Yes, the schedule's difficult. You got to go at Oklahoma, at A&M. You have Georgia in the mix. You got to go to Alabama, Baylor week 1. But I think this team finishes 10-2. I think they're going to win some really big games. I think you beat Oklahoma. You beat A&M on the road. I mean, they barely lost to A&M last year. Or did they win that game? I think they beat A&M barely. This is going to be a big season. it all is reliant on Jackson Arnold, who, yeah, he had a down year at Oklahoma. That offensive line was a disaster. The weapons were a disaster. He is in a completely different and better situation this year, and I'm really excited to see what it looks like. So I've got them finishing 10-2. I think they're going to be right in the mix for the college football playoffs. Florida as well. I'm really high on the Florida Gators. They're over under 6.5 games. Hammer the over. That is the easiest line that you could possibly bet. They're going to be better. This team went 8-5 last year. Ended up winning the Gasparilla Bowl. And you have maybe the most exciting quarterback in college football. I just don't see how this team gets worse. They're plus 1,800 to win the conference. I think that's a bet I would look at. Plus 4,000 to win the title. Another team that I think is in the running for best offensive line in the country. Left to right, their offensive line is phenomenal. You might have the best overall offensive lineman in the country in Jake Slaughter, an incredible player. And that's what's protecting your young quarterback, DJ Lagway. Now, I know that there's some injury concerns, and we'll see how healthy he is, but there's some excitement around DJ Lagway. If he can clean up the accuracy, he's going to be a Heisman finalist without question. The dual threat ability, the ability to escape sacks, he is a phenomenal talent that I'm really excited to see if he can take that next step. And Florida did a really good job, whether it be in recruiting or whether it be in the portal. Like, they made some nice moves, improving the secondary. The defensive line is still going to be really, really good. You got Tyreek Sapp, you got Caleb Banks, you got George Gums up there, and your offense is going to have some firepower. Eugene Wilson III, he's going to be healthy this year. You've got a young receiver in J. Michael Sturdivant, Jaden Boff. Exciting team. I think they're going to be really good. I've got them finishing 10-2. I think they're going to be right in the mix for the college football playoff. And yeah, I'm really high on what this team can be. So next up, at third in the conference, right outside my conference title game, I've got the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking of the two teams that are left out. One of them shouldn't be a surprise. The other one has to be a shocker. Alabama, I just don't really see how this team got worse. They bring back almost everybody, it feels like. Yes, you lost Jalen Milroe, but in some ways that could be an addition for you. You have Ty Simpson. You have Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard, who, look, I hyped up the Auburn wide receiver room. Let's not discredit how incredible Ryan Williams is and how exciting he has the opportunity to be for this team. You've got a really good defense that I think brings back everybody. But I think the most exciting part is that you bring in Ryan Grubb, very familiar with Kalen DeBoer, worked with him at Washington. This offense, I think, has the opportunity to really take the step in the right direction. I think they get to 10 wins. They're going to be a hard team to play against. They were right on the fringe of the college football playoff last year. And I think they are a better overall team in terms of just experience. Defensively, I think they're going to be just as good, if not better, because you brought in guys like Cam Calhoun, who I really like. You bring in guys like Nikhai Hill-Green, who I really like. So, yeah, there's some upside here for Alabama to be really, really good. I have them finishing at third in the conference, just outside the conference title game, but really like this team as a whole. I think they're really good. Another team that, yes, you have some unprovenness at the quarterback position, but Ty Simpson has been learning the system. He's young, heavily recruited. I'm willing to bet on the upside. I've got Alabama finishing third. At number 2, I have the South Carolina Gamecocks. I am so high on South Carolina this year. I love what they did in this offseason. I think they're going to be just as good as last year at the minimum, but I think they've got the ceiling to be a national title contender. Plus 7,500 for the national title to me is a very enticing line, to say the least. They are a team with, I think, a favorable schedule. You get Virginia Tech, SC State, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Kentucky as your first 5. I mean, that, and then you get Coastal Carolina in there. This team was really competitive last year, and if you looked at it, I really thought they should have been a college football playoff team. I liked their case better than Alabama's. They had some really devastating losses, but some massive wins in there as well. I really loved their defense. Their defense, I think, was one of the best in the country, if not the best in the country. And yes, you lost Kyle Kennard and TJ Sanders and Nicky Menwaria. You lost some pieces there. I think they have the replacements in place. Jalen Kilgore, Damon Clowney, Dylan Stewart. Like, this team, I think, is going to be really fun defensively yet again. Your defense is going to single-handedly win you games. I think you beat LSU this year because of your defense. I think you beat Oklahoma because your defense is that good. The question is the offensive consistency. Can you be the consistent offense? I think they can be. Lenore Sellers is young, but the upside is remarkable, and I think he is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I think he's a Heisman finalist, and if Nick Harbor takes that next step, you might have the best receiver and quarterback duo in the country. I know it's a lot of ifs with South Carolina, but this is a team that I don't think it's that outlandish for some of these things to hit. I really don't. I love the defense. I love the coach. I think they have built an identity, and they're going to be a tough team to play strictly because of the defense. And if Lenore Sellers can be a good quarterback and he can continue to build off of what was a really strong season, South Carolina is going to be one of the best teams in the country, and I have them finishing second in the SEC behind the Texas Longhorns. So I do ultimately have winning this conference. There's just not a weakness on this team. The secondary, the linebacker play with Anthony Hill. Up front, you've got a really good defense. The offensive line should be really good again. The running back duo is probably the second best in the country behind Penn State. You've got a great, well-rounded group of wide receivers, and you've got a great tight end and Jack injuries. I mean, I could go on and on about how high I am on this Texas team. Yeah, I have one loss coming. I think it's at Georgia. The Texas has not been able to figure out the Georgia thing yet, but I love this team. I think they're well coached. I think Arch Manning is going to be as good as advertised right out the gate. And this team just has everything that you're looking for in a national title contender. There's no question about it. I'm really, really high on this team. I have them finishing as number one in the SEC. I think they take home the SEC title. They make the college football playoff. And we will see how my playoff picture pans out. That video will be coming for you guys later this week. So stay tuned. Leave a like on this video. Subscribe if you are new. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.